Hi everyone, welcome to Must Read Monday. My name is Dabney. I'm the young adult librarian at the Twin Lakes Library System and I use they, them pronouns. For today's episode, I am going to be talking to you all about 3 new books that just came in with our February cart. And I'm going to go ahead and just jump right into it. And the first book we have is The Project by Courtney Summers. So this one currently is only available in print in our collection. It's not on any of our digital resources at this time. So this one is a very highly anticipated read for me and for young adult assistant Abby, who does our videos as well. And so we, have both read Sadie by Courtney Summers, and that's a book she's like really well known for, and it's like definitely a book for older teens. It's very intense and dark and kind of like a thriller mystery. And The Project, why I was like super excited to read this is because it is about a girl whose older sister ends up joining a cult, and so it's a lot about cults, which I don't know, I think are really fascinating to like learn about, really kind of scary. So not that I'm like a cult expert or anything like that, but so yeah, that was a big draw for me. But in this book, Lo is the main character. So she's 19, she's like living on her own and working, like she has a job at this independent like newspaper magazine publication, and so that's what she's like currently doing. So the story kind of goes like, but like I think it starts out with like her older sister's narration, so it goes like from her older sister B to her, and then it also kind of time skips, so you'll have like flashbacks and then the current storyline as well, kind of all going along, and as you're getting like each like further into the story, like more and more information is being revealed, and I really like how that was done. But anyway, so like Lo, you find out when she was a child, she and her parents were in a car accident, and the accident killed her parents and left her like severely injured, and so she's in the hospital like on the brink of death, and B is like just a teenager at the time and ends up meeting this man in like the hospital chapel, and he tells her like he can heal her sister, so he comes and like prays over her and supposedly heals her. And anyways, that was B's introduction to the cult leader, Lev Warren. And so, from that time on, B is just kind of pulled into his orbit and eventually ends up joining his group, the Unity Project. So, like, the Unity Project kind of has this like very glowing reputation. They're kind of like affiliated with Christianity. Like Lev Warren believes he can like redeem humanity essentially. So that's interesting. But yeah, so they've got like wealthy people supporting them, and they do like a lot of philanthropic projects that are funded by these like wealthy donors. But it's kind of like once people enter the Unity Project, they're supposed to like cut all ties with like everyone from their old life and not see them again. So that's what B did when she joined. And of course, Lo, when she gets older, she's trying to like track down her sister and being told like, your sister doesn't want to talk to you, she doesn't have anything to do with you, you need to let it go. So that's kind of like the setup of like what's been going on, and you find out all that as you're reading. But anyways, what kind of kickstarts the current storyline is that Lo encounters this young man in the subway, and he recognizes her and tells her, this like passage from the Bible, like right before he jumps in front of the subway car and is killed. And so his dad ends up coming to where Lo works, talking to her boss, saying like, the Unity Project killed my son, like you need to investigate them. And so while Lo's boss doesn't pick up the investigation, she decides like, now is the time for me to try again and try to get in contact with B. So this story is kind of about Lo trying to expose the Unity Project and find her sister and find out what happened. But as she gets like pulled deeper into the world, things start happening. So I'm not gonna spoil it, but it's like a very gripping story. It's kind of one of those ones that you can't really put down because you keep being like, what is gonna happen to Lo, like what happened to B, and yeah, it was just really well done, really chilling and gripping, and honestly, kind of like Sadie was, the project, it kind of delivers that extra emotional punch because like stories like these exist and are out there, and that makes it like even more real. So yeah, this is definitely like an older teen read. Like I said, the main character is 19 and pretty much like all the characters she's interacting with are adults. But it was really really good. I liked it a lot, and this cover is amazing. Alright, next up we have What Big Teeth by Rose Szabo. I'm sorry, I didn't look up the pronunciation before I started this video. This is another one that I got really excited about simply because of this cover. I just thought this is really cool, and just kind of like the whole like premise of it is interesting. So this one is kind of like a dark fantasy kind of horror story with like some mystery elements tied in, as well as kind of a historical YA story. The time period is never like explicitly nailed down, but I believe it's like post World War II, like possibly during the 50s or 60s. They have bikinis and radios, and it's after the war, so sometime during that time. But anyways, our main character is Eleanor. So she, her family, they're all kind of like monstrous, basically. She's got like different people in her family who are like shapeshifters, like they turn into wolves. Her mom is kind of like, half human on one side, half kind of sea creature-esque on the other, and she like kind of has to hang out in like a tub of water all the time, or like hangs out in the bathtub. And her grandmother is kind of like a witch, and all this stuff going on. And so when Eleanor's little, she's like sent away from her family, and she's sent to go stay at like this Catholic girls boarding school, and she never is like allowed to come home. She sends like her family letters, they never write her back. I think the only person she's in contact with is like her grandmother, and she doesn't really know why she was sent away. And like there was an incident that happened when she was little, but she doesn't really remember what she did. And so she's at the school and ends up like attacking one of her classmates who's like bullying her. And so she like flees the school and goes home because she's like, there's no other place for her to go. And, as it's been so long since she's been around her family, so it's kind of like this shock coming back and seeing them and basically seeing like how strange they are. And she's like having a really hard time adjusting because she thinks like that she's, kind of normal, that she's not like them. And this story is about her sort of, uncovering like the mysteries of her family and the mysteries surrounding like who she is and what she is. And this isn't really a spoiler necessarily, but she ends up having to kind of like take over her grandmother's role in the family, and so that's like even more pressure because like different family members like don't support like what she's doing or really even want her around. There's like this mysterious guy who's like a friend of the family, and she meets him and she kind of remembers like meeting him when she was little, but like he hasn't aged at all, and so he's like really important to the plot and the family. And I don't know, it's just really well done how things are kind of like teased out and revealed as you go along. And it's definitely very dark. I think some people compare this to like Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, and it does kind of remind me of that. So if you like that book, check this one out. And yeah, it was just kind of so much going on, but it's really, really good, really well done, very, very creepy. That's the main word I thought about as I was reading this book. It was very creepy, but very good. So, and then my final new book is The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. So I've got the ebook pulled up here on Libby. So we have the print book in our collection, but it's checked out right now. Also, let me just say, What Big Teeth, that one, there is an audiobook on Hoopla of that as well. But The Gilded Ones is the first book in a series, and so that's the one I just finished reading this week. And it's like, it's definitely fantasy. It might kind of remind you of books like Children of Blood and Bone. But yeah, so the main character in this is Vega, and she, so like the world she's living in is, it's like this empire that's uniting like people from all different lands, and they kind of like, women don't really have any rights in this world. They're very like oppressed, and really the only roles, at least in Vega's village, that women can have is to be like a wife and a mother. And so, all girls across like all the lands, once they reach their 16th birthday, they undergo a purity test, which is where the priest like cut them, and if their blood is red, they're pure. If their blood is gold, they're impure and cursed and like sentenced to die. So, because of this like purity test, girls are like kept away from like sharp objects basically their entire childhood, because like they're not supposed to bleed before this purity test. So it's like a very strict and oppressive sort of like theocracy. And anyway, the book starts out with Vega going to the purity test with the other village girls, and she's also kind of like, she's from the southern provinces, so her skin is dark, and like she lives in the northern provinces where like everyone is kind of like pale and white, and so she's kind of had a hard time growing up there. Like a lot of people kind of are like think that she's impure simply because her skin color is different. So she's like feeling extra pressure to pass this purity test. And anyways, while everyone's waiting to be tested, they're attacked by these creatures called death shrieks. And when they attack, like, Vega can sense that they're coming before they attack. And so this kind of like awakens this power in her. And like the other villagers like observe this, and so they like are like, oh, you're a demon, and kill her, like go to kill her, and like her blood bleeds gold, so like she's impure. And they like, the priests take her away, so you know, she thinks like, I'm dead. But then she wakes up because she is like all the girls who like bleed gold, they can be like killed and come back to life. Like, they're called Alaki. And so it's like they can be killed multiple times, but if they die like their true death, then they'll stay dead. So she's basically being tortured and killed over and over by the priests and like even her father. And she ends up being like rescued and taken to the Empire capital, where they're like recruiting other girls like her to form like this elite fighting force to fight the Death Shrieks. So like all these girls who bleed gold, they're called Alaki, and they're stronger, and they have like other abilities that kind of make them like almost superhuman. And so the Emperor gives them like this deal that if they fight for 20 years for him, then they will be they'll go through like this ceremony with the priest, and they'll be you know, like purified, and then they can like join the rest of society. So that's what Vega does. And so that's kind of where the story takes a turn. But anyways, like I said, this one it's very like also probably an older teens book, because there's lots of violence and torture and death, and as well as just like it's a really misogynistic like empire, and there's like a lot of abuse of women going on. So it was kind of like, for me, difficult to get into, because of that was just very heavy, as well as like the religious oppression was very heavy. So it kind of took me a minute to like get more into the story, instead of just feeling like, oh my gosh, this is so like the suffering. But I think like once she ends up in the capital and she starts meeting other girls like her and training and like unlocking these abilities and kind of trying to find another path, that's when I was like, okay, yes, let's do this. So it ends up being like a really empowering story. And it's like, as I said, the first of a series. I'm excited to see what happens next. But yeah, I think like all of these books, I didn't really plan it this way, but they all kind of work great, because this is like Women's History Month, and all of these books feature like these really like strong female characters who are kind of like in different ways sort of like overcoming the challenges they're facing, like the Gilded Ones, like literally going against the patriarchy and this like abusive system, and what big teeth. That one kind of like overcoming dark, tragic family drama, and also kind of like, you know, she's like monstrous and kind of othered in society as well, trying to kind of overcome that. And the project, overcoming cult leaders. But yeah, they were all really great reads, all very different, but you know, if those different topics like interest you, I would say definitely check them out and check out our other new books that we just got. Yeah, I hope y'all have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye!